So my journey with lupus started with a hospital visit for what I thought was food poisoning. I'd been feeling really nauseous and weak, so I went to the ER. The staff started to run tests and finally found out that I had lupus. So I was in the hospital for about a week. It's been almost a year. It'll be a year in July. Prior to my diagnosis, I didn't really have any symptoms or signs, so it was a complete shock to me to be diagnosed. Since I've been diagnosed, it's been an interesting journey. The initial diagnosis was, again, a big shock, and I ended up being in the hospital for about a week, so it was a lot to take in. But since then, it's been pretty good. I really don't have any bad days. I don't really let it affect me, and it doesn't affect my day-to-day life much at all. For me, so far, there haven't been, aside from my initial diagnosis. When I was first diagnosed, my kidney function was very, very low, and there was some concerns about possibly needing dialysis or a transplant. So that was the biggest concern for me. But luckily, things looked up and my kidney function is back to normal, so that's not something that I have to worry about. But when that was an issue, that was definitely the biggest challenge that I had to face.
I was diagnosed back in 2008. I don't think it was a typical diagnosis. The only thing that I had at that moment was achy joints, and my hair was falling out a little bit, but not extremely but I thought it was just due to stress. But I spent 10 days in ICU because I couldn't figure out, and I was severely anemic. But that's where my diagnosis came. I had about 2 false lupus. There's not a specific test for it, but I guess my ANA test was negative twice, but they suspected that. But about 5-6 months passed by, and then I came down with the flu-like symptoms where I just couldn't deal with it anymore. But went to my local ER, and at that time I had inflammation in the heart and inflammation a little bit in the brain. I had fluid, and of course I was transferred to Emory, and that's when my diagnosis came.
I was diagnosed with lupus when I was 16. In the Virgin Islands, St. Thomas, we don't have any rheumatologists, so we used to have to go, my dad and I would go to Puerto Rico to see the rheumatologist in Puerto Rico. I was, the signs, I guess, that I had were anemia, what he called it chorea, where my hands were moving by themselves, inflammation and swelling and pain in my joints and things like that. Then they put me on all my medications. I went to college in New York. While I was in New York, I got, before I got there, I got a vascular necrosis in my hip. So I had bilateral hip replacements at 18. And then now I have nephritis. That's the last part of it.
Okay, my journey started about 9 years ago, and thought I was good bill of health. Relocated to North Carolina and started having some weird occurrences with my body, from red spots, a lot of pain, and I began to go to the doctor, see a primary physician. Started April 2007. And literally went all the way till the end of 2007, December. Lots of blood work, still couldn't diagnose what it was, and to a point where the primary physician just kind of gave up and referred me to a rheumatologist there. In the midst of it all, I was still also trying to figure out what it was via the internet. Things I was looking for, I kept seeing fibromyalgia, myositis, never saw lupus. But once she referred me to the rheumatologist, that was the first thing she said, is she thinks it may be lupus. So we began tests. So early part of 2008 is when she was pretty certain that's what it was. But then she also told me that it would be continual testing because it's not the first test, but a battery of other tests to kind of determine it. And then pretty much at the end of 2008, I was diagnosed with it. And that's how the journey began.